Hello and welcome back to the Student Midwife Notes podcast. On today's episode, I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Jess, and we have been in uni together for the last nearly 3 years. We met sort of on the second day at university, and we instantly bonded over the fact that we were wearing the same outfit. And Jess has basically stuck with me as one of my closest friends on the course from day one. So who better to have as one of my first guests on the podcast? Jess completed A-levels as her entry requirement into university, and that's basically what we're going to discuss today. So here's Jess.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm third year student midwife, same as Lucy. I'm originally from the south coast, so a bit different from where Lucy came from. I did A-levels before I came to university, and I'll talk through what I did and why I picked those topics and how I got into midwifery.
Cool. So I've got a few questions that I'm going to ask Jess, and hopefully that'll uncover some good talking points that will be helpful to all of you listening who may be pursuing A-levels as a way to get into midwifery. So the first question, Jess, is what was it that made you choose midwifery as a career?
So my first kind of plan when I was younger was to be a vet. I've been raised around animals and horses. I thought, oh, this would be great, it'd be amazing. Did a week's placement at a vet and I thought, it's really not for me. Putting down guinea pigs and hamsters really wasn't, really didn't appeal to me. But I've been reading around midwifery and healthcare for a while, and I've really liked the idea of women-centred care. I'd come from quite a women-strong family, so I thought, well, better to look after them and find out what it's all about. And I'd always wanted to be about a midwife and what birth was about and how it went. And from TV shows, I thought, that sounds really interesting. And that's pretty much it.
Did you know any midwives? Anyone who was a midwife?
Not really, no. I've got mums in healthcare and my aunt isn't really healthcare at all. So it wasn't really a family thing. Yeah. Just a personal interest that I'd picked up on.
Yeah, that's the same as me. I don't have anyone in my family or know anyone who was a midwife before me.
No.
So my next question to you is, so what A-levels did you take? And how do you think they helped you prepare for midwifery? Because obviously universities sometimes ask for specific A-levels, usually biology or a science. So what ones did you take?
So I did 3 A-levels and a BTEC as well. I did A-level in biology, psychology and a joint course in language and literature for English, and a BTEC in health and social care. So the BTEC brought up my UCAS points then get into university, because I hadn't quite reached the grade that I needed for getting to university, but the BTEC points brought me up.
Oh, so is that like an AAS or?
It's equivalent to an A-level.
Okay.
So the points were kind of the same.
So how many did you do?
3 A-levels and one BTEC.
So it's like doing 4 A-levels, really?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay, wow, I didn't know that.
So my grade at BTEC worked out the same as an A at A-level, so the point was...
in health and social care, okay.
Yeah. So that was more course that uni focused than the English and the psychology and the biology. They've all helped though while being at university, especially the science part of it, knowing like anatomy and how things work. And
I think English has helped you as well, because Jess has always done really well on the essay sections of our assignments, and especially from like an organisational point of view, you can really tell the difference between your essays and mine or like our friends, because Jess has always got a very detailed plan and it's quite structured, and I think that has definitely helped you. It's taken away a lot of the stress, because I know I've worried a lot in the past like about the structure and things. That's something I had to learn at university, but obviously that's something you already had experience with.
Yeah, so for my A-level we had to write like a 4,000 word final piece about comparing 2 texts. So I came to university knowing how to reference already, how to structure and say properly, how to make it flow and read well. So I kind of had that already before I even came here.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And psychology, you mentioned, I think it was in our law and ethics module. Was that the one where it helped you? It was one, I don't remember, you'll have to remind me which one the psychology element helps you with the most.
It's been a couple. We covered things like child development and bonding between mothers and babies in psychology, things about like reflexes and how they recreate your facial features and that kind of thing. So that helped with infant development and looking for things when they're first born, but also how we kind of work as a person and think, and fear as well, how we handle our fear and things we're scared of. That we covered a lot in psychology, and which really helped, especially with labour pains and then being terrified and scared. So
sorry if you can hear creaking of the stairs. It's a very loud house, and we've come down into the basement to hopefully avoid any noise, but I can definitely hear that, and I'm sure you can too, but you'll have to let us off on that one. Obviously it's a new podcast. So When you're doing A-levels, this is an extra question, sorry, did you come across any resistance from, so you did A-levels at your college, not a sixth form, see, no. I did some, I sat them and that's about it, at my school, and you did it at a college, and did you come across any resistance from tutors? Because I know that's a common thing that I think people really come across, because they say midwifery is very hard to get into.
So I didn't, so my 2 BTEC tutors are both midwives anyway. They'd retired and then gone into teaching afterwards. So it's them helping me write my statement and look at jobs and what to do and what to learn and read. So they were really helpful with more like midwife-centred kind of progress things. Whereas I think my tutor for biology wasn't massively helpful. She wasn't that encouraging. She thought I wouldn't get in. My grades weren't amazing. They were good, but they weren't amazing. But she was very much, you need to work harder, you probably won't get in, just see what happens. Whereas those two are very, you can do it, you know, I know it's tough, but we've been there, done that, we know what to read and what you can look at. And they were really helpful with getting into university. That's
very interesting. I didn't really come across any resistance, as in to say you can't do it, but I could tell that they thought that it was a stretch. Because I had a friend who was also applying to nursing, and we were in the same sort of position, similar predicted grades, and we sort of ended up we both ended up in the same way on results day as well, not initially getting onto our courses, but we were actually well supported in writing our personal statements. But I do think that some people do come across a lot of resistance, and I think that comes from a point where sixth forms and colleges just want, for their numbers, people to get to university.
Oh, definitely.
So they will persuade you elsewhere in order for them to just have the number on their statistics that X amount of people went to university. So if you do come across that sort of resistance, just go with it. Don't give up because they've told you that you can't do it. I think you should keep trying, because they're probably only discouraging you because they want their numbers to look good. Obviously, if you don't get on, you don't get on, but it's better to try. And they do look, universities, it looks good on you if you've maybe tried and failed and tried again and then succeeded, because they get a lot of reapplications, and I think a lot of the time it's from A-level students maybe who didn't get on in the first place, because there is a lot to learn.
I mean, even though they were quite discouraging, just the one teacher was quite discouraging, I was still confident that I'd get on, so I'd bought my pots and pans and everything before I even got my results. So I hadn't really put a thought to not getting in.
Yeah.
I was that determined to get in. I was like, I'll get in, it's fine. Like, I didn't think about not getting in.
I was the opposite. My mum didn't take me to IKEA until I got onto a university course, which wasn't even midwifery, but either I've already talked about that in another episode I've already released, or that will be the next episode. I did go to uni, just not midwifery, not how I'd planned, but that's for another episode. So one of the things which I hope to cover with this podcast is that your grades that you get is not really the be all and end all. It's not the defining factor. It's not what gets you the place on the course, because with midwifery you have to write a good personal statement and then you have to pass an interview. And a lot of universities, they're looking for you going the extra mile and having outside experience with extracurriculars or sort of transferable skills that you've developed through your life experiences. So did you undertake any extracurricular activities, or what were the transferable skills that you sort of put in your personal statement and displayed at interview, which helped you get your place on the course? Because you were a first-time applicant and you did get your place first time.
So I'd worked for a long time, since I was about 13. I volunteered for my first job quite young. I'd worked since then the whole way through to starting university.
What was your job?
So I was a stable hand for about 3 or 4 years. And then I worked in a pub as a barmaid for about a year. So with that, it was like people skills, time management, managing money as well, like costings, customer service, all those kind of like people interaction or communication skills that were really beneficial for midwifery. With it being one of the 6 C's, communication was really what they focused on, especially in interview.
Yeah, communication is a massive focus throughout the whole of the degree, and literally forever it will be. So if you can pull from your life experiences ways or times when you've shown good communication skills, that will always reflect well on your application. Sorry, I just cut you off then. What else?
Apart from that, I went straight from college to university, so there wasn't really much time to do studying in between the two of them. But I worked at the bar until I left college, and then came straight from there, really. Within 2 weeks, I left work and then joined university. But yeah, it was just really people skills, managing situations that were a bit difficult, especially when I was younger, working with the horses, we had a couple of times where things were a bit tricky, and just me and one other girl working there, so it's quite tough and quite hard to work in, actually outdoors. And
yeah, so like thinking on your feet, problem solving skills.
A lot of problem solving, yeah, especially with horses. They're just got a mind of their own.
Mate, I've got nothing to do with horses. I don't know what they're like, and I never will. I'm not a fan.
They are crazy, absolutely mental. But no, it's a lot of like thinking quickly and just planning ahead, especially.
Yeah. So when you were at interview, what were the experiences which you pulled upon, which you think, you know, helped you stand out?
So we had a question that kind of looked around how you'd handle something stressful or a situation, that kind of thing. So I kind of mentioned about how I had a customer who wasn't very happy with something and how you managed the situation, to chat with him about what happened and communicate with him about what we'd planned to do, and just handling situations that were a bit more stressful and needed something.
Conflict resolution. So you've got your problem solving skills,
Yeah.
conflict resolution and communication. Those are key skills.
Definitely midwifery, definitely.
Yeah. And when you were writing your personal statement also, did you feel like it was a complex thing that you had to do, or did you just go for it? Because I get a lot of DMs on Instagram, people asking me personal statement tips and things like that. And I, to be honest, I didn't really stress over it too much. Like, I had an idea when I was on the train one day and I just went and wrote it, and they were like, yeah, that's okay. But I think some people really stress over it and think that there's an ultimate formula that you have to use to write your personal statement. Did you feel that way? Because obviously you write a lot more structured than I do. I tend to just rush into things and do it and hope for the best.
So the one that I actually put into my application was my second draft. I did the first draft, kind of planned things out, what I wanted to say, the key points that I thought made me stand out. I think where I'd done English at A-level, it made it easier to write things out more clearly how I wanted to say them. But I think everyone's different. I think some women took longer to write theirs to get it planned out. Some hadn't been in school for years and years, hadn't written anything for a long time. But I found it relatively easy to know what I wanted to say and the points that made me me, essentially.
There is a lot of online resources as well, I think, on how to write a good personal statement. And I think the main thing is understanding the role of the midwife, of course, and drawing those key skills, midwifery skills, and identifying areas in your life where you have displayed those.
Definitely.
And then sort of applying that to your statement and at interview too.
Yeah.
So my next question to you is, what advice would you give to someone who is applying to university or considering applying to university to study midwifery with A-levels?
So I think the biggest fear for me was that jump between university and college. Would it be a massive jump? Would the work be harder than I thought it would be? Could I keep up with it? The best thing to do is just to message someone who's already on the course and just ask someone who's doing it and living through it, so what they thought about it, how their transition was from college to uni, how they found it going from writing an essay about English to writing about midwifery. Because for me, I've been to A&E once in my life. Apart from that, I hadn't been near hospital, so I didn't really know. I knew what it involved, but not being in
not
the
the true environment. Because the placement experience is one thing and the university experience is another, really. Definitely. Isn't it?
For someone like Lucy with the account on Instagram, just message someone what it's like, what I did for their application, what they recommend doing. A lot of reading is what I found was really helpful. So much reading. To
be honest, if you message me, I might not reply because I'm really bad with my DMs. I probably shouldn't out myself like that on a podcast where I'm trying to promote myself as someone who's very helpful. Yeah. But if you know someone, I'd say speak to them. But there's lots of resources out there. So I've got YouTube videos about my experience, and people write blogs and have Instagram pages wholly dedicated to that. There's so many student midwife accounts now. It's a lot easier to see what the student experience is, because when we started, there was nothing online really other than the student the Facebook page, Ellie Durant's Facebook page, the secret community, that's it.
Yeah.
Other than the secret community and a few YouTube videos that she made, Ellie Durant that is, there was pretty much nothing out there about the true lived experience of a student midwife. It's really kind of grown
in the last couple of years.
Yeah, which I think is fantastic, and I think more people are realising what midwifery is as like a whole profession and what it is to study midwifery. Because I know at open days, when I went to university open days, they would always say about, people have a very romanticised view of midwifery. The one born every minute style, the call a midwife style.
Yeah.
Style of midwifery. And they were really quick to sort of manage our expectations in that way and say, you need to do your research, you need to really understand that the role of the midwife is really complex. And I found that quite difficult because I did know what the role of the midwife was really before I went there. But the fact that it seemed like they were having to manage expectations a lot, because I think the dropout rates were and still are quite high.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly due to the fact that there was no media presence around midwifery other than fiction.
Yeah. I mean, you can't really get much more real than someone who's actually on the course and living through it and understands what's going on. I mean, it's helpful to watch these birth shows and get a really kind of basic, really simple view of what midwifery involves. But I think what you see on TV in real life are so different because it is entertainment essentially for people. It is real life, but it's a very altered, skewed view of midwifery.
Yeah, it's edited for the general consumer, not for someone who's interested in midwifery to learn about midwifery like
and
that.
To work, essentially.
Yeah. So in that respect, you need to do your research, but looking for the lived experience of a real student midwife or a real midwife. And we are lucky now with Instagram that there's loads of them out there. There's also loads of real life working midwives. Not that we're not real life working. We're real life working student midwives, but we're not real life working midwives yet. But there are plenty of those accounts on Instagram too. But again, remember that Instagram is an edited view of what they do. Like, that person has chosen what they want to show you about their working life too. So it is difficult to get that true representation of what you do as a midwife. But also places online like the NHS website and NICE, I think, give a good description of the actual role of a midwife. Because that's something that's really important to know, and you need to show that in your application, that you do also really understand that well. And I think if you're coming straight from school with A-levels, you have to show an extra level of maturity.
Definitely, yeah.
You have to prove to them that you are ready to take on a career with a lot of responsibility. Would you agree?
I think when you come straight from college to university, you've not really had that time to maybe go and travel or work as a HCA or something like that, or had that experience working. So you've got to have that little bit of extra something else that makes you stand out, apart from just, I've got a qualification here, a bit of paper. It's more than the paper they want to see, it's the person they're wanting to employ, not just the exam results. It's a bit extra you can find, even just placement somewhere, or like a breastfeeding support that you go into for like a day or two. Just something extra you can put on there that's saying, oh, they've gone out their way and done that. They've thought more about what we're looking for rather than just what they think we want. Yeah,
because I think when you come straight from school, you are in an easier position, and you have a lot more resources to hand sometimes. Obviously, you don't have that long work experience time which you can pull your transferable skills from. However, you do have very recent academic experiences, and a lot of schools and colleges do have the resources to support you a bit further than if you were to have just come from a working environment and done an access course, or even especially an online access course where you don't have that sort of tutor support and more like one-to-one relationship with someone who can support you to make a good application. Also, in your A-levels, so at your college, did you get involved in anything other than literally just going there to do your A-levels?
So apart from that, I was quite bad, didn't we do a whole lot? I mean, I did look at sport, but I was awful at sport in secondary school, so it wasn't really something that I jumped at. But I was working most of the time. I wasn't at college, so I was either at work or studying, so I wasn't really masses of time for anything extra that I probably could have done something extra, but I didn't because I was just
that is interesting to know, though, because sometimes I think people get caught up on doing the most. And, like, I worked every single day. I went to college and I did my studies, and I volunteered here, and I read this and I did that. I think having a good balance is also something that is impressive.
Especially in placement and working life. You can't be studying all the time when you're at university whilst doing placement and everything else. You need to find that time to keep things separate and keep things clear, so you're not getting confused and stressed and worrying about 20 things in one time. Just keep it simple.
Yeah, that's a good tip, actually. So this is actually our final question that I've got written, but I'm going to try and extend the conversation so we talk to Jess a little bit more. I think I can just do some, what word am I looking for?
I don't know.
Improvised, off the cuff. I've ad-lib. I've asked Jess questions which I didn't prepare her with prior to today. So finally, what are your career goals and where do you see yourself in the future as a midwife? Do you see yourself as a midwife? And, it can be short-term, long-term. What are your goals?
So I wouldn't stay in midwifery. I wouldn't ever change for anything else. That's all I really have enjoyed doing at the moment. I know some people, they're enjoying it, but it's not what they're looking at long-term. But it's my kind of long-term view. So my dissertation was about trans pregnancy, and that I'm really interested in. So like LGBTQ care and that kind of centre midwifery, something that hasn't been explored yet or focused on. There aren't actually guidelines out yet for trans care, so that's still quite a new, underdeveloped area of midwifery. So that's kind of something that I wanted to look more into.
Yeah,
especially for a career, like it's quite interesting.
Yeah,
quite personalised system and quite quite women or trans person focused area of care.
So that's sort of like a long-term future. So where do you see yourself in the immediate future as well? Because we're at a very transitional stage in our midwifery careers. We are right at the end, about 6 weeks to the end of our third year. So what do you hope for the next year or two?
So I'm currently looking at jobs kind of locally where I'm from, so the South Coast kind of area. There's none kind of out yet, but I'm hoping I can apply home, do my first year, train, get to a band 5, band 6, and then just go from there. Just see what I get interested in while I'm doing my first year. Employed as an actual midwife,
a real midwife,
one,
real life, 100% midwife. Yeah,
and just go from there. I'm not really too fixed on one thing right now. I could change my mind when I get there. I could find something that I like when I first go there. I'll just see what if it takes me, really.
I think we are very lucky because we are young. We came to midwifery straight out of school pretty much.
Not had children yet, not been tied down to anything necessarily.
Yeah, we've not been attached to life in any other way other than a midwifery degree. So we do have a lot of options, and I think that is what is exciting about someone who's maybe coming to midwifery straight from A-levels, is that you will be young and you potentially have, so if you graduate when you're 21 at the very, very youngest, like just turned 21, some people, like an August birthday.
That will be me 21 when I qualify.
Oh wait, yeah, of course.
I'll be 21.
But you'll be nearly 22. I mean, like an August 21 would have literally another 45 plus years to potentially work as a midwife.
It's crazy.
And I can't even begin to imagine what it might look like.
Especially when you're young, you haven't got children or a home, you can go everywhere to want to work, like London or go to a different country.
Yeah, I mean, if you're up north, you're probably like, why do all these southern people always bang on about London? You've got your amazing cities up there, such as, I don't even know.
Liverpool Women's Hospital.
Yeah, but that's not even that north. That's like is that the Midlands? I really apologise to everyone listening from the north. I've just outed myself as
it's more north
a southern person who's basically never been to the north. But the point I was trying to make was that you have potentially 45 years in the NHS if you want to stay in the NHS or go elsewhere, which is also the potential to be part of the transformation of services, because I would be deeply upset if in 45 years midwifery looked exactly the same.
Oh, so would I. Nothing had changed, hadn't had any improvements or care changes. It would be
devastating.
It'd be heartbreaking.
And with all that experience behind you, you really have all of that time to think big and look to the future. I'm not saying that if you came to midwifery later on in your career that you don't have those opportunities, because there are people who do. They start in sort of the middle of their life and they go on to do fantastic things and only have like a 20-year career. But I think there's an exciting ability of someone who's just coming straight into midwifery to do that and be part of a bigger change, because you do have that experience and you have more time to take more opportunities. And I know something that midwives have really recommended to me is that because you're young, take every opportunity, because there's no rush.
Definitely.
and I would definitely say it's a big recommendation to people coming from A-levels. Don't set yourself those big long-term goals. And it's quite contradictory because I just asked Jess, what is your long-term goals? But you don't necessarily have to set them. And when people ask you what you want to do, you don't have to say, I want to do X, Y, and Z, a big plan or whatever. That is what's really exciting about midwifery, is that it can take you to so many places. A lot of people will say to you, oh, you should have done your nursing first. Midwifery is a really specialist area. You've specialised so young. I can't believe you would do that, blah, blah, blah. But actually, midwifery is a separate thing in itself because you can still specialise in midwifery.
You definitely can, yeah.
It's a massive, massive field, although it's not as ginormous as nursing. It's still absolutely huge with ample opportunities. And actually, you might not even be a midwife forever. It would be quite sad if you left the profession, but it does give you a lot of transferable skills also to do other things.
But there's still jobs that are still linked to maternity care, like health visiting or child nursing, that are still linked to what we do now. But you can still transfer the skills that you've learnt in midwifery to that kind of career.
Yeah.
If you did want a change of scene or a change of career.
Yeah. So is there any last words for our A-level prospective students or current A-level students applying to midwifery now? What would you say to them? One last piece of advice.
Put in all the hard work now. I know I probably didn't as much as I could have.
I definitely didn't.
It is worth it with A-levels, putting in that hard work in that time to revise and just to get your knowledge really secure before you go on to someone completely new and you're learning all new things. Especially with science. I think I forgot a couple of things from biology that I probably could have done with in first year.
I definitely did, but I forgot enough in my A-levels before I even sat the exam that I had to go and do another year of it, so it was quite solidified in my memory by then. But I would not recommend that. I would recommend studying for your A-levels whilst you're doing it. It will save you money, if anything.
Just put in the hard work now and then you can enjoy your break in between college and university before you go on to that new part of your life. So,
I was just about to close off, but a bonus question. Jess lived in halls in university for the first year and she moved away from home. Would you recommend that experience? Because I get a lot of questions. Should I live in a hall? Should I stay at home? Should I try and get a uni house? Obviously, I'll speak to Amy in another episode about going straight into a house. But what was your experience with halls, like being a midwife?
So my uni halls weren't actually owned by the university. They were a separate company who ran, like a halls company. So the girls I lived with in first year were second years and third years. They weren't first years. But in that way, it was nice. It was still meeting someone new and a new face, but they'd settled already. They knew what the university was like because they had that advice from...
Yeah, they'd gotten over the freshers hype.
Yeah, so they were quite settled. They were really chill, which was helpful in place when they weren't out partying or anything. Or they were quite really nice, lovely girls. I think it depends on who you are, really. I mean, for me, I didn't move that far. It's about an hour and a half from where I lived at home. So I was still within reach of parents who wanted to go home for a little while and have that break and get away from university. But I think if you want that bit of time and independence away from family, then definitely look at halls. But I think first year would have been tricky if you were in the uni halls.
The main halls, yeah.
Because a lot of people go for freshers and partying and nights out. I think if your house is quite understanding with you being on placement and doing night shifts and long day shifts but you sleeping, then it'd be really chilled and quite nice and easy. But it just is dependent on who you're with and where your halls are as well. I think there's halls where we are, where they're right above the student union, so it's loud most nights. But it depends on where you're applying to and what their halls are like and how they put students in halls. How
accommodating they are to healthcare students.
I know our halls put all the healthcare students in halls together, so they were all
I know
in
they do
flats
that.
together.
Oh, they do that at University of Bedfordshire as well.
So just see where you're applying to, what their policy is for student halls and with healthcare students. But I think it just depends on what you're like as a person. I mean, if you want the peace and quiet and not to be around
halls and the university experience is not the be all and end all.
If you're here for that, then by all means,
if you're here for that, a midwifery degree is probably not the one for you because that is going to severely impede on your partying time.
Yeah, that's very true.
you can still fit a few nights out in. We've definitely had some good nights out. Yeah. But if you want the full on uni experience,
a healthcare course probably
going out at least once a week, getting involved in clubs and societies, these are all things you can do, but it's not, you don't have the full 100% experience. And I will touch a little bit, or I have, I don't know in what order this podcast is going to come in. I will speak about that in my episode because I experienced that for 1 year and 1 year only.
I don't feel like I've missed out though by not having that party kind of thing, that freshers, the sports and stuff. I've not been
You didn't
sad
miss it.
about.
You didn't
I've
feel
not been
like
sad
you've
about not
been
having
cheated.
that. Because I've been so busy with everything else and placement and worrying about other things rather than netball match or hockey thing or a sports night out.
Jess is now slating all of our friends who do netball and hockey and like a sports night out. But what the point we're trying to make is, with a midwifery degree, you will not be 100% in the university student union's life unless you want to be involved in your midwifery society, which is again something I will touch on in another episode. But for now, Jess, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
This is the first episode I've recorded with a guest, and hence why it is very jumbled up and probably a bit messy. So please do bear with as I begin to fine tune.
It's rustic.
Rustic.
Authentic.
Those are all the good positive words that we want to use to describe this podcast. But yeah, thank you for joining me on this podcast. And please subscribe to the podcast on whichever app you're using. I don't know how you rate podcasts, but if you have the ability to rate this podcast, rate it. If you're watching or listening to us on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, comment, and please subscribe to my channel. And follow me on Instagram to see when I upload the next one. Thank you so much for listening, and you'll hear from me again soon. Goodbye.